Great. Well, thanks for agreeing to talk to me. I don't know what all you remember, and there are many things in the Institute's life that I wasn't present for, although I've been kind of in and out since 1979. So we'll just kind of probe and see where there might be some things that would be interesting to talk about. And if there's anything you don't want to talk about or you don't remember, just let me know and we'll move on. And if you get uncomfortable or want to quit, just tell me, okay? We met in 1979 when I was at an institute at an old honeymoon resort in the Poconos. That was before that you folks found Mendham and began that partnership with Mendham that was such a long-standing thing. And I guess one thing that I've always kind of wondered is, at that point when I came in, Mark Weinstein had just joined. You'd just gotten the grant from Pittsburgh Steel. Things were kind of beginning to take off. You were very confident, if I remember correctly, that you had the formula for doing this right. I mean, you were about as confident as I think I ever saw you in those days, that this was really working. Do you remember that time at all? I remember. In the 79, 80s? How was it for you? I mean, I know how it was as a beginner coming in and meeting you and Matt, you and Anne, but how was philosophy for children for you in that period when you'd gotten the Rockefeller money and the Pittsburgh Steel money, and things were, you had a curriculum. I think the curriculum had Harry and Lisa and Suki and Mark. Those younger books were yet to be written. So it was that beginning curriculum going up the high school range. How was it feeling to you in those days?
Well, for one thing, I don't clearly remember the Pittsburgh Steel grant that you referred to. It's just going out of my mind.
No matter what, it was just big for me because, that was what the news that had been reported that day. They'd given you some for what today is a tiny amount of money, like $40,000 for drug abuse prevention. And the idea was people who thought wouldn't use drugs. Anyway, so but that was just the piece of news that was announced when I came there, and it was big at the time because it was new.
And I remember you as being a much skinnier person.
Yes. Oh yes. That's unfortunate. I've gotten larger, and I wish it has some advantages, but I should go back to being skinny again. Yeah. You'd been working with Anne for a few years at that point. Yeah. And what was how did the training seem to you from your side as you were doing trainings with people and with the professor training stuff, and what was happening for you there?
Oh, I think what we were doing seemed reasonable to me. I mean, if I had to do it again, I would have done the same thing. Of course, I didn't know anything else to do than what seemed reasonable to do with those people, given their backgrounds and interests.
The idea you had was to just go through the novels just the way they would go through the novels with teachers, just the way the teachers would go through novels with students.
Yeah.
Was that always the way you intended to do it? Did you ever have any other idea, or did that seem just like the obvious thing to do?
No, that seemed obvious.
Yeah.
There was no alternative. It wasn't that we were desperate or anything for lack of an alternative.
Yeah, okay. It's just so many people trying to do training in that context would have done theoretical work, would have explained what they were doing more, that would have been a natural approach, would have taken it back to Dewey or something. And I was struck that when you did training, you restricted yourself to just working with the novels in the mode that you had developed for working with kids. I thought that was brilliant, by the way. I think that was maybe the most important thing that you did.
I don't know that I thought it was brilliant, but it did seem obvious to me on the one hand that this had to be done this way, and on the other hand that it was unlikely that I would ever convey to the people there and people like them what philosophy was all about. And yet, if you didn't know what philosophy was all about, it's unlikely you're going to be successful with this approach. So I had my back to the wall, in a sense. Either it worked or it didn't, but there were no options.
So you felt that it was unlikely that you could convey to the people there what philosophy was all about.
Either they brought it with them, see, which was a possibility, if they were philosophers who'd been trained, or if they weren't philosophers, at least if they were people who hoped to be philosophers and had enough up their sleeves by that time so as to do what had to be done. But that was all that I could think of offering them. And even now, it's hard for me to identify, to understand the elements of the approach. It just came naturally. I must say, Annie brought the same kind of understanding. We just assumed that this is what a philosopher brings to a philosophy session.
So that's been the problem all along, hasn't it? If someone already understands philosophy, then they take to the materials very readily.
That doesn't mean they can explain them.
Yeah, but they know how to use them naturally because they have a questioning mind of the right sort.
Yeah.
The problem has always been how to bring someone who doesn't have a questioning mind of the right sort into an understanding of philosophic questioning. That's always been the hard thing with kids, and then with teachers, and then with professors even.
You're putting it in terms of certain questioning strategies that were indispensable to understand philosophy. And I'm saying there must be something. We assumed back then, and have assumed ever since. There must be some way of approaching this subject matter that has to be articulated and assented to the subjects in the program. So when we find ourselves dealing with those elements, we know we're on the right track, but we can't spell it out. Couldn't spell it out. I have felt desperate at times as a result, but not so much as to give up hope. And for that reason, in the past 10 years or so, I've grown more confident that an identification of the elements of philosophy would show up, not after a long period of time, but the time is approaching when what we didn't know and needed to know then was coming to be evident now. And the autobiography is an example of that. The autobiography assumes that if you soak yourself, I guess that's the word, in enough philosophy, you would find those elements. But you needed somebody to help you shape the thing. And that's what I think we have come to do, we are coming to do. Does that help any?
Yes, it does. I think if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is that with philosophy and philosophic competence and a philosophic way of thinking, you kind of know it when you see it, or you know it when you engage in it. But like many things, you can't say in detail what it is that is essential to that competence or to that mode of activity. So you can't do the kind of account that, say, Euclid would give with the elements one step at a time, but you can kind of immerse people in the activity and hope that by being immersed in the activity, they'd get the trick in the way that a person doing sports eventually figures out how to shoot a basket or how to move on the court or something. Is that, did I get your point right?
Yeah. I mean, there is something, you mentioned sport, to say, what is the sport where you lift yourself by a pole?
Pole vaulting, yeah.
Pole vault.
Aha.
Pole vault. Now, either you understand this or you don't. But if you don't understand how pole vault is accomplished, you aren't going to be able to throw yourself over that rod. And people laugh and they say, well, if we can't understand how a person throws himself over a pole, how do you expect us to understand the philosophy that's in your program? It's like throwing yourself over the bar. But it is and it isn't. It's obviously not philosophy, but the role that it comes to play in the carrying out of the throw of the bar, that is somewhat like what we do.
You somehow get people to be able to jump the bar.
Yeah.
Huh. Yes. What did you have in mind as your strategy for helping people to get philosophy as you were writing your books? I mean, one thing I think you've said already is give them a lot of philosophy of various kinds to do and hope that they catch on. Were there other ideas you had as to how people could be helped to understand this thing that you couldn't tell them directly because you didn't know the elements exactly? How did you think about what you were doing as you wrote those things, those books?
Well, there was the enormous confidence that I felt I had gained with the writing of Harry Stottlemeier. Harry plays a fantastically important part in the whole enterprise.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
You knew you could write other books because Harry had worked.
I wasn't thinking of other books at that time. I was just thinking about Harry. But on the other hand, what Harry showed me, he showed me that it could be done. But he didn't tell me. I didn't tell myself. It was never articulated. Not never, but it was. The task of articulation of Harry showed itself as eminently necessary once we had reached that point.
So there's a sort of mystery in the production of Harry, mystery to you as the person who produced it, that it worked and you weren't quite sure why or how it worked or what the design principles were, but you knew that you'd succeeded
in something.
In something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's putting it very nicely.
So after that, you knew that you could produce a book that would excite philosophic impulses and practice in people. When did you know that Harry was a success? Did you know as soon as you'd written it, this works? Or did you know when you worked with kids? Or how did you tell that you'd gotten it right?
It roused a suspicion in my mind that didn't pay off until recently. I began to suspect from the very beginning that Harry was working and that others could learn from it, and that the whole darn problem could be resolved if we took certain necessary major steps the way that had been done in Harry. But what these were and how they worked, we weren't sure yet.
So, am I understanding that you were imagining Harry as kind of the model, or the template, or the for the other things you did? That the something in this the order of Harry set the tone, or set the model for other books you wrote. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, not only for books that I wrote, but for all books that were written and to be written. And that's because there's something that happens when a person reads a book. And that is a person catches on to what this reading stuff is about. Reading and talking and dialoguing and all these things are there to provide keys which we can get nowhere else. Philosophy is such a key. And just how you use it to make it work, that's another problem. That's what we were having a problem with. But we didn't understand what is the relationship between philosophy and a book about Greece or something like that. What that relationship was remained a mystery. That's a mysterious way of talking. But I think it's justifiable.
You started to say out by talking about what this reading stuff is all about. Could you say just a little more about that?
Well, there's a kind of design or gestalt that you find yourself tapped into when you find yourself reading and conceiving and analogizing and doing all the things that philosophy demands of you. You have to carry out these tasks, and you don't even know that the demands have been made, let alone met. But I think that Harry is not just a symbol, the book is a kind of example, of what needs to be done in order to understand how the other designs and examples are going to work.
Are you saying that Harry is in some way a book that trains people or helps people learn how to read other books?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I've never had that idea before. Could you say a little bit about how it does that? In what way it trains people to read or helps people learn how to read other books or to read any book?
Yeah. I mean, you're onto a key aspect, I think, of what happens. I don't think that at this moment I can portray that happening, let alone explain it. It doesn't just need to be explained, it needs to be portrayed.
Well, it's helpful just to know that is how you think about the book.
Yeah.
That's very helpful, even if it's not possible to explain how it works. It will be helpful to people who work with Harry to understand that is something you wanted to do or you found yourself doing when you wrote it.
Well, here there are many different paths that go out from this point, and I'll get lost if I follow any of it. But just a moment ago, we were looking at our coming up to that point, and that was inebriating. Because I could then say at that point, that's the point, that's where it is. And then bang, that's all.
It happens to all of us, Matt.
Yeah.
With new ideas all the time.
Well, let me put it another way. That if it weren't for philosophy, I don't think that there would be a Western civilization, an Eastern civilization, any civilization. It carries in its pocket, wherever it goes, a passport that permits it to go where no man has gone before. It's the passport that approves of its getting in between the stuff of civilization and the stuff of philosophy, and they're melding.
Philosophy is a passport. passport allows you to cross borders, allows you access to countries that would otherwise be closed to you, allows you to travel. And that's what philosophy does. To allow you to travel.
It does other things. It does them rather successfully. But in its heart of hearts, it knows that this is not enough. There is something else, which we started this conversation. We were referring to that something else that it provides and makes possible.
Do you have any words for what that is?
Every enterprise, to give you an example, every book, in whatever language, I don't want to keep repeating myself because I have the feeling that something has been said that needed to be said but hasn't been said. And part of it was captured by the notion of the passport, which I had never thought of before. In quite those terms. But suppose you had a passport that had a design in it, a gestalt of some kind that shapes your destiny. And that philosophy permits, enables. At that point, you're coming very close to what I think I've been trying to get across.
Yes. Yes. The image of a passport is so rich because when you get your passport, in a way, I mean, when you actually apply for it and it comes in the mail, in some ways, it almost is that image that shapes your destiny.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you know that your world is different. Your life is going to be different than it would have been if you hadn't gotten that thing in the mail.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it will be different because you will travel to unordinary places.
Yeah, and that's why a workshop is necessary, even starting out with Harry Chapter 1. There's something that goes on in the workshop that goes on in the passport office, State Department, whatever it is. And something probably comes across the following year when kids are told that they will be doing a kind of sequel to Harry, or a follower-upper. And it's at that point where they catch on that there is going to be a different arrangement, a different rapport between them and their teachers, between them and their studies, them and their parents, and that the guarantor of those values or symbols what you were introduced to in Harry, and you will find reinforced in the subsequent books. You get confidence in that way. I got confidence in Harry. Harry assured me it's there.
So when the kid the next year is told by his or her teacher, okay, this year we're going to do another philosophical novel, Lisa. The kid, because he's gone through Harry, has certain hopes and expectations that are powerful and new.
I feel kind of funny about this because I don't usually talk about doing particular programs.
I'm just Lisa as an example.
Well, that's what my point is. I had a dream last night about doing Lisa. And there were things in what we did in Lisa that we could never have done with Harry. I was very pleased and amused, entertained by doing Lisa in the middle of the night. I don't know any more to explain it.
There were things you did with Lisa that you could never have done with Harry. What kind of things?
Well, take that little, a number of things. The first chapter with the dog and the man beating the dog.
Yes, I remember it.
Yeah, nobody forgets it very easily. Of course, the dog is more than just a dog. And the owner, Mr. Johnson, I think it was, is more than just a dog owner. And then there was, a little further on, the dating game. And how can you not have that kind of experience in a values program? It was so unique. That's not the way other programs work. Well, I can't get into that now. I don't remember it well enough.
Mm-hmm. You were happy with Lisa. Your sense was Lisa was also a success as a book.
And I was happy similarly with Suki.
Yes. Matt, I've always thought that Suki in some ways was, I don't want to say your favorite, but it was a book you put a tremendous energy into. Tremendous amount, and knowing that you had been involved with aesthetics as a philosopher, I sometimes think that Suki is sort of the labor of love of all of them in a funny way.
Yeah.
It's almost too rich to use in the classroom. There are so many things in it. It's like it keeps kind of poking out the edges. There are so many ideas and exercises, and the manual's good.
Yeah.
The manual for Suki is full of valuable writing exercises. You must have had fun writing that.
Yeah. More fun probably than any exercise or set of exercises that's in the program.
Yeah. You can feel that reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, because the things come together in the exercises. There are microscopic versions of the entire program, of the entire civilization, stuff like that, it's where you for a moment you put it together, and then it falls apart. And then for a moment you put it together again, and everybody knows what's happening. Nobody can say anything.
I love that image. For a moment you put it together, and then it falls apart. I mean, it captures so nicely my experience working with kids with these books that for a moment, something is achieved which is, at that moment, being achieved at Harvard and Columbia and the Sorbonne and Oxford, and something's coming together. And then they go back to being kids, They go back to doing whatever it is they're doing. But that business of it coming together for a moment is, I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but just for a moment, people see something clear, or they can do something they couldn't do before.
Yeah, well, that's so important that a student of whatever age has a momentary, well, the opposite of a lapse. What's the opposite of a lapse?
I don't know. That's a wonderful question. What is this? This is one of the things one could put into an exercise.
Yeah.
An opposite of X. What's the opposite of a lapse? Maybe a connection, or to bring it, or for bringing it into the Greek, a synthesis, coming together. What's the opposite of a lapse? It's a very good question.
I have no idea.
Students have well, we'll just leave it like that. Students, for a moment, have the opposite of a lapse.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, it's like a finding.
A finding. Yeah, the difference between the opposite of a lapse is a finding.
Yeah.
Students have a finding. That's very nice.
That's because It comes through in their experience and out of their experience. And the students, like especially Suki, have such integrity. They will have nothing but the genuine lapse, or the opposite of a lapse.
A genuine opposite of a genuine finding.
Yeah.
They'll have nothing but a genuine finding, which means it has to come out of their own experience. Huh. That's been so important in your writing, to insist that people's findings come out of their own experience, not be taken over from somebody else's systems or insights or books. Yeah. So each was when you wrote these books, Matt, I'm thinking now, Harry, Lisa, Suki, did you feel like each one was a new project, like a new journey or new adventure, or did you feel like you were in some sense repeating, doing it again on a new topic? So first we do logic, and then we do ethics, and then we do aesthetics and writing.
It's the last one.
Okay. So in some sense it was the same project done again.
Yeah.
I see. And that project is, if I understood what you said before, to write a book that teaches people or helps people to understand what a book is.
Yeah, so that you understand what a book is, not just by coming to understand books, but by coming to understand language. And for each one, that goes in the same direction, same way.
Coming to understand language.
As it is elementary to that discipline, science or art or philosophy or whatever.
So Harry is about language as it is elementary to logic and reasoning.
Yeah.
Lisa is language as it is elementary to ethics. And Suki is language as it is elementary to art.
Yeah.
Does that mean coming into the right relationship to certain particular words, or to the use of language in general? How do you understand that? When you what is it to understand language as, let's say, elementary to art?
Well, it is and it isn't elementary to art. It is elementary to art in the sense that every discipline has an affair taking place between the study and the approach to the study. But then there's that other business that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation about the transport. It's not the same as having a elementary business. I don't know how to express it. No, I'm not getting it.
Well, you've given me this wonderful formulation. Every subject has an affair taking place between the subject and the approach to the subject. I think that's what you said. I could think about that one for a week.
Yeah, and yet I think it will stand up. But it's a rather abstract way of putting it. Needs a lot of work.
But I love the word affair
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have said there's a relationship,
Yeah, it is.
but it's an affair taking place between the subject and the approach to the subject. It's very nice. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Ah. Gee.
Well, I'm tired now.
Yeah.
I can feel myself dragging
Right.
for a while there.
Well, would you like to quit at this point, Matt?
I'm not good for much more.
Okay. Well, that's
I'm
fine.
not good at all.
Well, if you'd like, we can quit now, and I can come back and see if we can make another run at it tomorrow.
I think it'd be a waste of time to do it now.
Okay, that's great. I'll call Joanne, and yes, I must tell you, Matt, I interviewed Senator Gene McCarthy when he was your age, roughly. It's a very similar. It's a very similar interview, yet not in the subject, but in the way it was valuable.
Yeah.
It was a very similar interview. He had images. He had it, and he couldn't always say, "This is what the image meant," but the images were new, and that was very valuable to me. So I thank you for that. I'll call Joanne and pack up my equipment, and we'll make another visit
Okay.
tomorrow morning.
All right.
Thanks.